Hi, I'm Aisha.
Hey, I'm Jasmine.
What's up? It's 1228.
And we're IJT Productions.
Welcome back, everyone, to a new video from IJT Productions. And today we are actually missing the I of IJT. She's on vacation. So, shout out to Aisha. She's on vacation today. So, me and Jasmine will be holding it down. But we have a special guest with us today who we want to get into a nice conversation with. And, I'm not going to introduce the guest because I can't do it better than she can. So, Kelsey, introduce yourself. Tell the people who you are and how to follow you and all that good stuff.
Well, obviously, my name's Kelsey, and I'm pretty much all over social media. Yeah, I'm a former athlete. Now I'm pursuing music and acting and kind of more performance-based stuff. But yeah, it's the same type of grind and hustle. It's just packaged a little differently. And it's just been a really funky year. And I think, like everybody else, like anybody watching, I think some of us kind of realized a little bit better who we were. Some of us found our voice. Some of us found new passions. And it's just been a really crazy time. So, but yeah, I'm just trying to go after some things and pursue some things. And that's me. I don't know. That's it.
Okay, listen, wonderful. Wonderful. And Jazz, you want to start off with a question?
Yeah, so Kelsey, I follow you on social media. And so one of the things that I really admire that you were talking about, that you wrote an article, which I'm hoping that you could speak more about, but you were talking about, sexism and just also, just being a female woman wrestler and how it's viewed in the sports world. So I just wanted to know, like, just from you, like, what was your intake on that, like just sharing like what the things that you have gone through as being a female, in wrestling and also, just being in the Olympics, and what was that like as well for you?
I mean, it's interesting because we all, like, everybody celebrates the Olympics. I mean, I would say if there was one thing that struck me the most when I made the Olympic team was I saw it bring together people that you would never see come together, like my family. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because you don't have to even understand anything about anything going on, but everyone understands the magnitude of the Olympics. So that it was pretty powerful. And I didn't even expect to make the team. Like I was an underdog and I really, both times I won. So I really, I was sincerely grateful. But I think as far as specifically the article I wrote, what's kind of crazy about it is, I'm sitting here, like, the editor of the magazine approached me about it. And this was back when we were kind of like in the heart of the 2020 chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And like the racial climate of our country and the social climate and the political climate of our country was very, it was rising, and depending on who you're talking to, very polarizing. And so for me, writing, and it's funny because he gave me a word limit, which I completely exceeded, which is why there were two parts. I was like, Mike, I don't know how do I say less and talk about both of these things? You can edit it however you want, but I don't think you can really, it's like if you're trying to teach someone the Bible and you're like,
right,
let's just like try to sum it up in like a book. I guess maybe you could, I don't know, like, but it's hard to really paint a real picture, specifically within my sport, in such a limited space. And I was just like, so then he was like, we'll do two parts. And so I thought that was awesome because there are layers to it. When we're talking about race, there are layers to it. When we're talking about gender, there are layers to it. And so I think for me, I wasn't trying to stir the pot. I was literally just writing about things, number one, that I had experienced my entire life. And number two, I was writing about things that I never had a platform to talk about before.
Right.
You can talk about things now, like if you're being harassed at work, if you aren't being treated fairly, if you are being discriminated against because of this color of your skin. Like when I was growing up, when I was in college, like those were, you could bring them up, but it was an uphill climb. Like, and now it's like, you can talk about those things and you're still gonna run into opposers anytime you speak up. I mean, I suddenly have an opinion and I can't tell you that, I mean, you may have seen, but the things that people say to me just for having an opinion, which really, some things aren't really opinion issues. It's like, well, no, that is racism or that is sexism. Like, you know what I mean? That is disrespectful. That is judgmental, you know? And so I think, you know, I think for me, it was just taking the opportunity I had, and things were very fresh and raw. I'm not sure that, I couldn't even tell you exactly the exact date that I wrote it, and it was released in, like, regarding the election. Um, but you know, the George Floyd protests were happening, and the racial-based protests were happening, and we were in the height of those things when I wrote it. So it was coming from a fresh place, but it wasn't like new things. These were things that I had just experienced. So it's really interesting, you know, talking about things now, even mental health, talking about those things that you did not talk about those things when I was younger. Like it just wasn't a conversation
Yeah.
that you had, you know, without being stigmatized. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm grateful that, and that's the thing about social media, especially. A lot of people have a lot of opinions about it. Even I do. I'm a millennial. So, you know, if I hadn't been an athlete, I probably would have stayed as far away from social media as I possibly could, because it's not really like, I don't really like putting stuff out there every day.
Yeah.
But it does give people a platform and a voice. And I mean, you hear it all the time. Imagine if we didn't have smartphones. Like that can go both ways. You know what I mean? But I think I will take the pushback because I know that it gives people a voice, including myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's well said. And you know, you spoke on your experiences as far as being an athlete and a musician and amongst many things, right? So I wanted to ask you, just as a person, like growing up, like how did you balance, you know, having so many different desires and so many talents? Like how was your upbringing, you know, balancing everything?
Um, so to be honest, I've always been more of an artsy creative person. Music and songwriting and dance, and those were just things that I just was very naturally drawn to. But I did sports growing up too. And really what it comes down to is, you know, I didn't have a great childhood, and I just really, really threw myself into anything I could. And, you know, I grew up fairly poor. And so my grandparents, like enter grandparents, they would help me raise money or fund summer camps or shoes to join the basketball team. And really, and I always knew that, like, I played basketball for 8 years. I played soccer for 8 years. I did like a lot of different sports. I actually didn't even start wrestling until I was a senior in high school. Um, I always knew that those things weren't my passion, but I I was like, I'm gonna do anything I can to give myself a chance. I'm not, I knew at a young age that there was only so many years in life where you can really do anything, right? And so, you know, in high school I was very involved in a lot of different things. And then wrestling, I developed a passion for later. And I very quickly saw an opportunity there to pursue it. And I had no idea it was going to turn into what it turned into. but also back then, you know, being a musician or a dancer, even I knew some really phenomenal dancers growing up. A couple that I know are professionals now. And it's incredible because growing up, like now you can really make it as a performer just because of social media. Whereas back then you really had to go to like every audition. People didn't take like tape auditions. I mean, it was rare in the creative space for that to be a viable like path to audition. I mean, I just remember how tricky it was as a singer and as a dancer. You know, you really did have to just show up to stuff. So if you were financially limited, that's what made it such a grind. And now, like, you can literally become famous if you know how to put together a good TikTok video. I mean, it's pretty wild. So back then, I mean, who knows what I would have been like if I would have had the platforms that we have now. But I knew at the time music wasn't as obvious of a path. I always intended on pursuing it, but I really just saw a window there with wrestling. And it was a sport that I recognized, like, you don't have to just be naturally good. You can really work hard and be good at this. And I wasn't naturally good at anything. I had to work hard at everything that I did. And so for me, I was like, that is an opportunity and I'm going to take it. And it was kind of like that my whole career as an athlete. But yeah, I mean, I think as far as your question specifically about juggling those things, I think when you are in a place of instability or chaos, or when your back's against the wall, you don't think about like, oh, I need balance. Like, oh, I need to take a day to myself, self-care. Like, these are not things that you think about. I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday. Like, self-care, if you have, it's a great message and it's important, but if you're in a position to really, like, if you're in a position to be able to give yourself that type of day away from everything, from all the chaos, like if you have that luxury, then you have to recognize it's a luxury. Because I remember working multiple jobs at different points in my career. I remember donating plasma to like put gas in my gas tank. I was embarrassed to say those things back then because my motivation wasn't to do good. It was because I was broke, you know? So, and this was after I made the Olympic team, right? And so I think when you're trying to make it, whatever that means, you don't think about balance, you just do it. Like, it's not until you start to overcome some of those things that you're like, okay, you start to change the way you think and balance, and oh, I can save, and oh, I can plan a trip. Like, I couldn't even save a lot of the times growing up, like, because you're like, well, we just have the next bill to pay for or whatever. So I don't know, like, I think, again, to answer your question, I don't know if balance was even a word that crossed my mind. Like, I don't even know if
it was more survival. It was more survival than anything.
And you just think different. I mean, there's studies on it. You just think differently when you are in survival mode. You behave differently. You act differently.
Right.
Oh, wild.
So
that's true.
Now I want to follow that question up with this, because you said something about like having your back against the wall and just figuring it out as you go. So have you had that moment of self-care, right? Had that moment of like, okay, I did this, so now I can, say I made something or I made it. Like, have you had your I made it moment? And if not, what would be your I made it?
It kind of depends. Like, I think it's like different levels, right? Like, I don't know if you guys are big hikers. It's a big thing here.
Okay.
Like literally hiking. I don't like hiking personally. I don't enjoy it. But when you hike, it's interesting because a lot of times you get to a point and you're getting up to a certain peak and it looks like the end. And then you get there and it's like there's this whole other part of the mountain. You know what I mean? In Colorado Springs, they have this thing called the incline. And we did it for conditioning, and they had a part to it called the false peak. So if you were taking someone, and it's like a mile, but it's like straight up. It's very difficult. And I remember taking one of my teammates, and and she thought it was done. And literally when she got to the false peak, she started crying. And me and my other friend, we were just like laughing and videoing her because it was funny, right? It was funny because we had already gotten past it, right? But to her, it was like, oh my gosh, there's more, you know? And so I think like I made it moments are like, they're not false peaks, but like you get there and you realize, oh, there's something else. And I know that that can be a good thing or a bad thing. I will say at different points of my life, like when I lived at the training center and I made the national team, I mean, I was in my 20s and I had lived on my own for so long that I was like, I don't have to buy toilet paper. Like it was, so for me, I had finally gained some stability for the first time in my life when I lived at the training center in my 20s, like where I could like breathe a little. But then, you know, I was trying to make the Olympic team. So there was that stress, right? Different battle, but yeah, a battle nonetheless. And then, you know, there were other times where I struggled. And then I think the other thing too is for the first time in my life, I would say now I'm definitely in a place where I'm like, not an I made it spot, like, cause I have goals and there are things that I still want to do, but it's the first time as an adult where I can take a day and I'm aware of it.
Okay.
I think when I first made the national team or when I made the Olympic team or these things that I've done in the past, I think that I made it moments, but I didn't have enough wherewithal to understand. You know what I mean? Like I just didn't have the hindsight or the perspective to see the magnitude. Whereas now I'm older and I'm like, wow, like there were days where I literally just the things that I do every day, there's no way I could have done this a couple years ago, you know? So the ship keeps sailing, you know, it never really stops, you know?
Yeah, totally understand.
Go ahead, Jess.
Yeah, I mean, like when you gave that, well, it's not even an analogy; it's actually true. When you guys were hiking up that mountain, you know, like I would have passed out, you know, just going up the first. But it reminded me of, you know, just especially like someone like me, for example, who wants to get into like music, for example, and I love to songwrite, you know, so I love songwriting, and I just think about that mountain, that hiking that I have to do to climb, like to get there. Like when I see it, I'm like, oh, I could be like so fearful because you know that it's gonna take like hard work, you know, to climb that mountain to get to it, you know. So what is like for you, like what is it like for you when it comes to like your music and you know climbing that mountain? Like how do you see yourself in a couple of years, you know, with your music? And
I mean, I think it kind of depends. Like some days I feel really motivated and inspired, like I can do anything. And then some days I feel like this is hard. Is anyone ever gonna notice my music? Is it ever gonna, but I think part of that is just baggage from the past, just people like naysayers, right? It's not, I think a lot of times our insecurities come from things we don't even like connect. We don't realize, oh, like there was a time back then when someone said this to me or someone discouraged me and maybe they didn't know that they discouraged me, but it made me question myself. And then sometimes, you know, you can struggle with confidence, but I think for me, like I would hope in a couple years just that like, I think when I was younger, I always wanted to be famous, like, but now like, I think I think tangibly, I would love for my music to be like streaming on multiple platforms, like heavily listened to. I would love to have like a very strong audience base and a strong fan base. And I would love to be able to really like earn a living doing this. And if fame comes with that, that's awesome. But I think especially as an athlete and going through the Olympics and you know, wrestling for ASU and doing some things that were kind of big mountains and realizing like fame really cannot be the goal. Like it really, for me at least, it needs to be something else. It needs to be like, I got to be doing something I want to do. And I think, you know, if if I'm able to be trending, or if my music is trending on any platforms, or if, I think that would be pretty awesome, just to have like a really solid fan base and really for my music to reach a lot of people. But I
Right.
have good days and bad. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm sure if I knew, I would have already made it, quote unquote.
Okay. Well, that actually, speaking of music, you put out a single recently called Mantra, and the words. I watched the video and I listened to the words, and at first, as I'm listening to the song, when you see a title of a song, you kind of get a perception in your mind. So I'm thinking like, okay, maybe she's gonna rhyme mantra somehow. Mantra is gonna be the hook, right? But I realized, but as I'm listening to the song, I'm realizing like, no, the verses are the mantra. Like you say these things to yourself, like this is gonna uplift. So I just wanted to ask you, like, what inspired you to create that song, and do you practice mantras and affirmation and things like that to keep yourself uplifted?
Yeah. So, I mean, affirmations, I'm a believer, I was taught to do affirmations very young in my athletic career by my sports psychologist. And I didn't know if it worked, but I just did what he said. Like, I would write on my mirror, I am a 2012 Olympian. And you look at it, but your brain can't know two truths. And so you either believe it or you don't. But if you look at it every day, you're gonna see it and think it, and you're gonna start to believe it, and then it's gonna become real in your mind.
Yeah.
And so I believe in affirmations. Um, there's another study. I just did an acting workshop recently, and the woman that was running it, she's a casting director, and she used to work for the FBI. It's really interesting, but she was telling us about another study where they found that it really takes about 30 minutes for you to convince yourself. Like, if you like actively pursue a belief for like 30 solid minutes, roughly, give or take the person, you will change your own mind, which is wild to me, and I'm not a person that's like, I'm not really into the stuff like The Secret or whatever. Like, I'm not like, if I just feel it really strongly, it's going to come to me. Like, I am not that person. But
Yeah.
Mhm.
as far as so yeah, I do believe in affirmations. As far as the song, with songwriters, everyone does it different, but it really did just kind of come to me. That my dad was humming, he was staying with me, and he was humming one day, and the melody just kind of came in my mind. I don't even know what he was humming. And then I kind of wrote it, and then kind of just filled in the blanks. It's kind of like that when I write music. It's a very organic process. It just kind of happens. And but as far as the lyrics, I was pulling from Martin Luther King's speeches. I was pulling from things my coach said. I was pulling through, for real. Like, I have faced the best. I really have. Within the context of my life, I really
Yeah.
have. So, if you don't know me personally, I would like to think that we can all relate to that. And if you
Mhm.
do know me, you know that I'm telling a true story, so like, I think the song, it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Um, but yeah, I think that, you know, like, the theme of it really is a mantra that I would hope
Yeah.
a lot of people could relate to.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty clever, honestly. I really thought the way you wrote the song was great songwriting, number one. And it's definitely gonna be a song I'm adding to my playlist for working out
I
because
like being out of the playlist. That's like music.
yeah, oh yeah, because
Definitely.
for me, like I
Good.
have I have to hear like positive things when doing the exercise because like kind of like you said with hiking, like running on a treadmill to me, sometimes like what I try to do is I try not to look at the time that's remaining, right? I try my best not to, I just run, like listen to the music and run. But every now and then I look down, it's like I felt like I was running for at least 20 minutes. And it's like, no, you still got 20 minutes left. So, when you hearing songs that tell you to keep going, it's telling you to stay positive, stay focused. Like it gives you that energizing energy that you need to finish your workout and finish it strong. So songs like Mantra, I definitely love positive music that can give you something that can just give you that extra boost just to keep going a little longer. So thank you for that. Shout out
Yeah,
to you.
you're welcome.
Yeah,
You're
shout out
Oh
to
welcome.
yeah.
you because it's like, most of the times for even artists to come out, the first thing we have to do is show our bodies or talk about something, sexual to sell, like because we're taught that sex sells,
Yeah,
and to do
Hmm.
all these things. And I sometimes, you just want positivity, you just want positive music that
yeah,
is like uplifting, that people, especially like during this time when you mentioned earlier
Oh yeah.
George Floyd, you have different things about race battles and just all these different things. Like this is the time for the world like to actually like come together. You
yeah.
Yeah,
know, I
definitely.
really appreciate it and keep up the positive music. Keep it coming.
Yeah, make sure y'all add Mantra to y'all workout
Yes,
playlist so y'all can
yes,
the
definitely.
get the
Yeah.
gains.
And you know, it's weird 'cause when I wrote it in my head as more of like a ballad.
Okay.
Um, but the producer came up with the beat, like that kind of island reggae
Yeah,
sound.
definitely. Yeah.
Um, the song was what it was, but I didn't envision it being that way. But I'm so glad that I like trusted him with it because I really feel like, yeah, it is a song you could jam to or just like go to the beach with or whatever. Like I
Mhm.
really do feel like it's really kind of that happy medium.
Yeah.
And I also agree with you. Like I've never been into music that was really derogatory. I've never been into music that was overly sexualized. Just personally, like it never did anything for me, like ever. And
Hmm.
you know, not to say that there's some creative people out there, whatever, but
Yeah.
so it's not for me to say you should or shouldn't do this with your skill set. But I just it was never I never had to like make an effort to write the way I wrote. It's just
It was organic.
it's what made sense to me, you know.
Hmm.
If you're
Sure.
walking around thinking about getting lit with your people or whatever, like then yeah, if that's what you that's if that's your life and you're maybe you're gonna write about that. But for me, that wouldn't be authentic for me, you know.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to also ask you this, and I don't want to keep you all day, but
Yeah.
we want to just thank you again for joining us. And I wanted to ask you kind of what you shared as far as, you had to give blood and, your journey wasn't easy. You didn't come from a great background of money and affluence to where you can just have all of the paths laid out for you, right? So with that said, how did you maintain focus and stay motivated to accomplish your goals? Like what kept you going?
I think it's a double-edged sword. I think part of it was um I just I just knew what I wanted. I knew what my goal was. Um and it's weird because I will say, you know, there's people I've coached, people I'm friends with even today. And with all the platforms and like even now being an athlete, even an amateur, technically an Olympic athlete, now it means something different than it did when I first made the team in 2012. Like back then, you make the team, but there's so many things that you don't share because there's nowhere to share it. Like there's nowhere to post your workout or whatever yourself. I mean, it just wasn't. And so I think for me, it was kind of easy in a way because it wasn't about those things at all. It wasn't even there for me to use. I mean, I think Twitter just started.
Hmm.
And I really mean that. Like, if I were pursuing the Olympics for the first time today, it would be just so different than it was for me. And I'm grateful because I couldn't afford to be distracted. My life would look very different if I hadn't made that team.
Hmm.
And I'll be the first to admit it. You know, there's opportunities that I've had that I never would have had without that attached to my name.
Hmm.
Um, and I think the other thing too is, again, like just what I said before, aside from like the world just being kind of different back then, I always knew what my goal was. I wanted to be an Olympian. I didn't want to be a famous person. I mean, I wasn't tried. wasn't like, I want to be an influencer. I want to be a blogger. I didn't want to, those things just weren't, those things didn't motivate me, you know? And if I did want to be famous, it wasn't in athletics, it was music, which I wasn't, you know what I mean? So it was just a different animal. And so I think I just genuinely knew what I wanted, and that alone kept me focused. I
Yeah.
think people get distracted because they want other things. Like,
Mhm.
I wanna build my credit score, but gosh, I just really, there's like a certain lifestyle I wanna maintain. So they
There's
like,
so many options.
Yeah.
right? Or like, oh, I really want to be this great athlete, but I just really like partying with my friends. We have so much fun, you
Yeah.
know, or I really, you know, and whatever it is, like, I think people want different things, and that's what, it's not random distractions. It's like, oh, I didn't mean to like get distracted. It's like deep down, you kind of wanted that too, you know,
Right.
you did, like, you kind of wanted, and it's just so different now,
Mhm.
Mhm.
for all athletes, and it's a double-edged sword. I don't know. So I think I was focused, and I think my background too, like, I just didn't have, like I said, I just couldn't afford to not be. Literally, I could not afford to not be focused, but
Right.
also I just knew what I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Focus.
I was clear on that, so it made it a little easier to focus.
Yeah.
Got you. So I wanted to kind of ask you this too, because you just said something that kind of sparked my mind. So as you were on your journey to, focus heavily on being an Olympian and, training for that, in the back of your mind somewhere, it's like, were you like, but I want to sing? Were you ever conflicted, or were you just able to just fully jump into being an Olympian and being okay with that?
I think the passion for music never left, and I still had a lot of opportunities to perform and to write music. And the next couple songs that I'm writing, or that I wrote, that I'm almost done with in the studio, they were written while I was competing. I mean,
Oh,
like,
wow.
it's so organic. So it's not like I just stopped writing. I mean, when you get inspired, you get inspired. Um,
Exactly.
and I
Okay.
was always doing stuff at home, like on GarageBand, you know,
Okay.
All
because
right. Well,
it's pretty
garage band.
available. Like I go into a studio now, but like I said, there was a period of time where like I just didn't have the budget to go into a studio. So I figured out GarageBand, and I am not an engineer and I am not a producer.
Mhm.
But when you're trying to make some music, you just do it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So like a lot of the beats, even on my next couple songs, they're beats that I created. We just kept
Oh,
them.
wow.
Yeah. So, but I think like the passion never left. There was just a point where I developed a real passion for wrestling, right? So it
Mhm.
wasn't like, oh, I don't really want to do this. Like, no, I wanted it. So it
Okay.
wasn't like, and I also recognized, for some reason, I just recognized that I would always be able to return to music, but I would not always be able to return to being an athlete. You have a window, and that's just me though. Everyone's different.
Mhm.
But then when I decided it was time to move on to the next phase, I just knew, right? Which, that's a little
Wonderful.
more recent, but it wasn't like I always felt conflicted, because, and there were times where I was getting the itch where I was like, man, I just want, like, if I watched a performance or I watched a movie about a singer or whatever, like it would strike me. Or if I watch a really good musical, I mean, that just gets my blood flowing. I'm like, man, I'm like, I can't wait to do that. You know, like I get those feelings,
Mhm.
but that's just natural, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. Like I would say I never really felt a lot of I never really felt truly conflicted. Because I knew I would always come back to it.
Gotcha.
So Kelsey, I just basically wanted to ask you, like, what adventures are you getting into now? Just besides like music and like building your career. Are there any other doors opening for you, or that you're like walking through right now as far as your career?
So I just received a call back about an audition that I submitted for. It's for a short film, and I submitted for a couple different projects. So kind of really just going after that, and really like the movie industry is just it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and you don't have a lot to show for it. So taking classes like acting lessons and doing a lot of auditions. I was just recently brought on as background in a major motion picture. Can't really say much else because it hasn't been released yet, but it was
Right.
a
We don't
cool
need no
opportunity.
Yes.
And I tell people, I'm like, I'm literally just going to be a blurry face in the background probably, but it was a really awesome opportunity just to be on a real set around like established actors. And it was just awesome. And then I wrote a children's book during quarantine, like a picture book. So, and the transcript's completed.
Nice.
And I was kind of in the process of maybe finding someone to illustrate, but I was like, maybe I should just illustrate it. Like, I don't know, like, why not? Why not? I mean, so I'm kind of been like, because I mean, I wrote a children's book. That wasn't something I planned on. So I kind of feel like anything you want to take on, if you're in a position to do it, why not? So I'm hoping to, I'm going to probably self-publish, and I'm hoping to self-publish this year. So I'm excited about that, just because I just think that it's always a good time to inspire children, always. So those are a couple of things I'm working on. Just a lot of auditions, the music stuff, obviously. And then, yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I mean, just that stuff alone can really keep, I get notifications like every day about different auditions that are opening up, and it's like,
Nice.
it's yeah. So I mean, so
I mean,
yeah,
that's a good problem to have.
It is.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
exciting. That's good
Right.
news.
That's wonderful. So, as far as sports though, are you still passionate about sports? Do you have any direction as far as coaching maybe, or doing some type of anything
I
with
mean,
sports?
there's been a lot of opportunity, obviously. I've been offered quite a few coaching positions. Even when I was competing, I mean, I remember one time being approached at the US Open. Like this, I was like literally like about to warm up for a match, and I'm like, really, right now? Like, I was like, that's really odd. But I have been approached for different positions, and I do like to work with athletes, more like individually versus like structured, like building a program. That's never really been a passion of mine. I
Mhm.
like working with youth,
Okay.
but I've just never had like the dream personally to coach. A lot of Olympic athletes, especially in wrestling, a lot of us go into coaching. And there are different reasons for that. I personally feel like just because I have an ability to do it doesn't mean I should do it. I think people that go into that should really, really want to do it. Just like being a teacher and educator, like if you're going to influence people, like you really have to want to be there. It cannot just be a paycheck or, well, I was good at wrestling, so I'm going to go into this because that's what you do, you know.
Mhm.
But there are some athletes that like are so passionate about it, and I'm like, absolutely, you should coach. You know, people have told
Gotcha.
me I should go into it. I just know that that's just not where I'm at. I've never
Mhm.
really been in a place where I wanted to do that. That could change, but I just don't feel called to do that. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay. I mean, and plus you're gonna be busy. You know,
Right. She gonna
auditions are coming in.
accent.
You're gonna be busy. You can't be in
Right.
two places at one time. So, but we truly appreciate you for joining us. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you for everything that you do, and we hope that you continue to keep being great and keep inspiring people and keep making content and just doing your thing. So, if you want to tell the people where they can follow you and what you have, any music or anything that you want us to, highlight specifically, just let us know.
I am so like obviously like him, like add mantra to your playlist, because that's like a pretty big part of these platforms is getting added to playlists, because that's how people listen.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and then I have some stuff coming out in the next few months. I have a couple songs that are pretty much almost done. And then I'm going to be working on a music video coming up. So like another one. So I'm excited about that. But almost all of my platforms are I am Kelsey Campbell. Twitter is World Changer 55 because that was my weight class when I made the Olympic team.
Nice.
And then my Facebook page, Kelsey Campbell. So it's pretty much just me. Everything used to be World Changer, but when I retired from wrestling, I decided it was time to like just be different, just like step away from that chapter. So I am Kelsey Campbell is where you can find me. But yeah, and honestly, I'm pretty easy to find. I'm pretty vocal, so.
Yes, beautiful, and you still are a world changer.
Thank
No
you.
matter what, you still are a world changer. So thank you again for watching. Thanks everybody for watching this video. Meet us in the comment section. Make sure you follow Kelsey Campbell, the world changer, and see you in the next video.
Bye.